right, thanks, Jim. Thank you to everybody for joining us today. Here's the agenda for the webinar. We have 3 speakers. I'll be starting off and talking about the Census Bureau's Boundary and Annexation Survey, including sort of a background on the program, what consolidation is, why you might want to participate, sort of where Wisconsin is overall in the consolidation process, and then how do you participate if you're interested. Then Tony Van Der Wielen from the Legislative Technology Services Bureau is going to talk about the BAS tool that was developed to help the counties in participating in BAS. And then hopefully Fred Owsley from Dane County will share his experiences in consolidated BAS from the county perspective. And of course, Jim is our moderator today. So let me give you a little background about the Consolidated Boundary and Annexation Survey effort. It grew out of a panel discussion that was started by Andy Foss at the 2012 Wisconsin Land Information Association Conference. And part of the reason for that panel discussion was the post-2010 census redistricting efforts in the state of Wisconsin proved to be challenging because, if I understand it correctly, the state dictated that the census data, as usual, had to be used for the redistricting efforts, but in addition to that, entities also needed to use the census boundaries for redistricting. And it's probably safe to say that tiger boundaries did not align well with local boundaries, and that made the redistricting effort challenging. There was, and also is, lack of a statewide boundary layer. So as a result of this discussion and this panel, the thought was that by perhaps working together, we might actually be able to achieve something together by using the County Consolidated Boundary and Annexation Survey as a vehicle to meet our collective needs. Why are we doing this again now? Couple reasons. Number one, I'm back in geography. I've been away for a while, so I'm excited to sort of restart this consolidation effort. And then secondly, the 2014 Boundary and Annexation Survey has been suspended due to funding. So to me, that presents a perfect opportunity, since the counties and other entities are not actually engaged in the boundary work. We could perhaps take that time to actually work on consolidating our efforts. So more background on the Boundary and Annexation Survey if you're not familiar with it. The Census Bureau collects boundaries as of January 1st each year, and what we're looking for are annexations, de-annexations, incorporations, and mergers. And we collect those boundaries for data tabulation, not just for the decennial census every 10 years and, of course, redistricting, but every year we're putting out American Community Survey data all the way down to the block group level. We produce data for the economic censuses, the population estimates. So we're using the current boundaries to actually tabulate data. We survey the counties, the minor civil divisions, which are townships. In Wisconsin is what we consider a strong MCD state. You call them towns. And we also survey all the places, which are the cities and villages in Wisconsin, along with the American Indian areas. And according to the most current census of governments, Wisconsin has 596 places, 1,255 towns, along with 72 counties. That's a lot of places for us to try to survey. And when you think about that, that's just for the state of Wisconsin. Nationally, we're looking at approximately 39,000 governments. There are 2 parts to the Boundary and Annexation Survey. The first part is of that is providing the geospatial changes for your governmental unit. And we're really looking for the change polygons to our Tiger file, the Boundary and Annexation Tiger file. It's not just a matter of giving us your current file. And then secondly, we're looking for the legal documentation for those changes. You can also provide boundary corrections, not just the legal changes, and I'm going to talk more about that in just a minute. Entities can participate digitally, although a significant number of entities, especially smaller governments, may not participate. They participate on paper, usually because they don't have GIS. And even though we do offer what's called a partnership tool that allows them to make those changes, a lot of those local government staff may not be comfortable with learning the software, and probably they don't have the time to learn that. When we talk about entities participating on paper, that may result in relative boundary accuracy, and I'm going to show you some examples of that. And some entities may not actually participate at all. And again, they might be new to their position. They don't understand what BAS is or what should be done. And also along those same lines, they may feel that because they haven't had any annexations, there's no reason for them to participate, so they're not actually reviewing their boundaries. And I do want to point out at this point in the presentation is that last decade, coming up to the 2010 census, we tried to realign Tiger to the local base wherever we could, where local governments provided us a file. And we did that with the street network and the hydrography if it was provided to us. The boundaries were rubber sheeted, and I'm not sure that everybody's gone back and actually reviewed the boundaries to see what they look like. So that's an important point as well. Inaccuracies can be the result of what are non-visible boundaries. Most incorporated place boundaries follow invisible features, not visible. You probably know that. And many of the minor civil divisions or your township boundaries actually follow the PLSS boundary layer. So I talked about entities participating on paper, and this is an example of a paper BAS map, the type of product that they receive. And I talked about that relative accuracy. Because there's no reference information, and what's in white on the screen is probably not terribly, have a lot of contrast, is the incorporated place. And the boundaries probably look relatively accurate, but it may be difficult to review those boundaries to ensure that all the housing units are properly included in the incorporated place because there's no reference information. You're not looking at a parcel layer. You're not looking at imagery. You have the ability to view the sheet of paper. So what is the County Consolidated Boundary and Annexation Survey? The county responds to the BAS on behalf of the governments within the county. And the entities have to agree to have the county do that. You can't just decide, you know, I'm going to do this. They actually have to agree before you're considered a consolidator. And the other point about consolidation is that not all the entities in the county have to agree to consolidation. If you get another entity, a couple, or all of them, you're considered a consolidator for the Boundary and Annexation Survey. There are quite a number of benefits for the County Consolidated BAS, and it's not just to the Bureau, I think there's a lot of advantages for the governmental unit, for the county, and actually for the state as well. The first of those is that most counties can participate digitally, and in Wisconsin you have this wonderful network of the land information offices. So most counties actually have some type of GIS where they can participate digitally. The counties may already collect and maintain the most up-to-date boundary information for all their governmental units. And if you're not getting it, this is a wonderful way to actually give those places an incentive to share that with you. As a consolidator, you're also providing a service to the entities in the county. The feedback that I've gotten from a lot of the counties that are already participating in the Boundary and Annexation Survey is that, especially the smaller governments, are more than happy to have the county respond to the Boundary and Annexation Survey on their behalf for a lot of the reasons I've already stated. They don't really know what to do with it. They don't have the ability to participate digitally. So you're actually providing a service to those governmental units. For us, it provides a continuity of BAS response because administrations change, staff change, and as there's turnover, every time there's somebody new, they don't necessarily know what BAS is, which really feeds into the next point in that the counties generally know what the Boundary and Annexation Survey program is. They know the requirements. They have the technical expertise. And there tends to be somebody in that office that has worked there over time, and so you're not continually trying to educate a new person about what the Boundary and Annexation Survey is. It reduces the duplication of effort. If there is no C-BAS agreement in place, we still survey all the entities. And even as the county, if you're responding to the BAS for the entities, unless that agreement is in place, we still have to go back and survey those other entities. And then if the county submits something and a place submits something and there's discrepancies between those two, then we need to go back and rectify those discrepancies, which results in more effort. A consolidation saves a lot of taxpayer dollars because the Bureau really has to engage fewer entities. Our ultimate goal would be to work at the state level where we're only dealing with, one office at the state. We're not there yet, but without that in place, we'd certainly rather deal with 72 counties as opposed to those 1,923 entities throughout the state. The consolidation effort also provides a roll-up of boundaries to the state of Wisconsin, and that's sort of where we've been working together. And Tony's going to discuss this in the next section, and when he demonstrates the tools that the group has developed to help the counties. Consolidation also contributes to a more accurate spatial data infrastructure. Under OMB Circular A16, the Census Bureau is actually the boundary steward for the nation. So I think it's good that if we have accurate boundaries reflected in that national boundary layer. And also consolidation can reduce inaccuracies where you can actually submit boundary corrections, and that's going to feed into your redistricting efforts, and I'm going to talk about that too. So here's an example of inaccuracies. I hope you can see this. The pink boundary is what we have in Tiger. The green boundary is the city boundary, and the pink are the parcels for this particular place. And you can see that the tiger boundary doesn't reflect the actual city boundary when you compare the BAS shape file to the city boundary. And it's possible that for all of these parcels here that we're not including inside tiger, if there are, I'm assuming, housing units on those parcels and the population associated with them, if we're leaving those out, you're not getting credit, if you want to call it that, for those housing units and the population associated with those parcels. And that's one of the things that we're looking at as part of the Boundary and Annexation Survey too. So in addition to encouraging counties to get consolidated BAS agreements in place, we're also looking to acquire parcel data, if you're willing to share it, and PLSS data to use as a reference source. And we're trying to overall improve the boundaries in tiger. Both of these data sets will not be included. They won't be added to the tiger database. They are simply used as a reference layer. And of course, we couldn't do that anyway. We can't share individual address information, but we're just using those for boundary realignment. And we don't release those in the public database. Perhaps some more benefits to consolidating BAS, especially at this point in the decade, is looking forward to redistricting again. It may seem like a long way off, but the redistricting data program is probably going to start in 2015 again with the block boundary suggestion program. And it's the state that participates in that. So that's Tony's group. So he sort of has a vested interest in getting the boundaries as correct as possible prior to our next redistricting effort. The other thing that we've got going on this decade is our Geographic Support System initiative. And you may not have heard a lot about this yet, but you will. The Bureau is collecting address point data, features, and other data layers like your parcels. And that's an ongoing effort throughout the decade to try and get our master address file and our geospatial files, keep those up to date as possible so that we're not all scrambling at the end of the decade getting ready for the next census, trying to complete all of that work at once. And again, I want to emphasize that we are producing American Community Survey data every year. So accurate boundaries means better tabulation. The other thing coming up is the potential of a targeted address canvassing for the 2020 census. For 2010, we went out and we canvassed every single block in the nation to update our address list, delete housing units that weren't there, add streets that maybe weren't shown. We're not going to have that kind of money, I'm going to guess, for 2020. And so what we're looking at is actually targeting where we need to do address canvassing. And so the better information that we have, the better decisions we can hopefully make coming up to the next census. Here's where Wisconsin is in terms of the consolidated BAS. State is doing great. We'd like to do better. We have 31 of 71 counties, and yes, I know you have 72 counties, but I'm not including Menominee because I'm not quite sure how we're going to work with that county since it's mostly Indian reservation. So that's a terrific start. And within those counties, we have about 49% of places covered, 40% of towns. So total, we're looking at around 43% of the government in the state. And I say about because with all of these county agreements, some of them have maybe a few places that have opted to continue the BAS themselves, so I didn't go and count one by one. So this is what the map looks like as of today. If you want to know how Wisconsin compares to the rest of the nation, I think Wisconsin is a leader. As I said earlier, our ultimate goal is if we can work at the state level for consolidated BAS, and right now there are 6 states that are participating because they have the ability to do that. You can see here that Indiana is completely colored in. All the counties are participating. It may be a little bit distorted. The state of Indiana passed legislation that the counties all have to respond for the minor civil division. So that doesn't mean every single county is responding for all the places. So when I look at this map and I look at Wisconsin, and all of these counties up here are pretty much responding for almost every entity in their county. I think the whole state, I think you guys are a real leader. And to that end, I'm really hoping that the state of Wisconsin and what you guys are doing and we're doing can serve as a model for other states in terms of how we might be able to work together to achieve what we all need. So how do you participate? There's paperwork. That's the government, so there's paperwork. You have to fill out this form, and the top part is where the county's information goes, and then in the bottom part is where all of the entities, or as many as you want to contact within your county, fill out this whether they agree to have BAS done on their behalf by you. Although this form is available on our website, let us help you, because we can pre-populate the form for you. And what we will do is we will fill in the BAS ID with all the entities in your county. We'll fill in the entity names, and then in a separate file, because it won't all fit and because you may find that whoever we send you might have left, we will send you who we have on record as the BAS contact for that entity, and we will also send you their mailing address, their email address, and their phone number. We're trying to make it as easy as possible for you to contact these folks. Then what you'll need to do is put a yes, no in the agreed column. That's really all we need, is do they agree or not, and the date of that contact and when they agreed to that. Some tips and tricks. We will provide you text that you can use in an email or a letter to solicit participation. One of the counties that was successful very early on in getting all the entities in the county to participate requested presentation time at a countywide municipal clerks meeting, was on the agenda, gave his pitch, and actually signed all of those places up right there at the meeting. And then he sent a blast email to the rest of the town soliciting their participation. In the end, I think he said he only ended up making 2 phone calls. So it didn't require a vast amount of effort or time in order to pull the C-BAS together. Once that that form is completed, you can scan it and you can send it as a PDF to our GeoBAS team. In order for Consolidated BAS to be in place for BAS 2015, we hope it'll be coming back, for the 2015 Boundary and Annexation Survey, we have to receive that by August 1st of 2014. So we got a pretty good window of time here to get these agreements in place if you would like to participate. Then what happens? The entities in the county that elect to have you respond for them will receive a postcard or a letter, and it tells them that the county is responding for them. And we do that because staff and elected officials have changed, so we want to make sure everybody's informed about what's going on. And then the county that's the consolidator receives instructions for completing the Boundary and Annexation Survey and where you need to get your information, and you should be on your way. This is our home page. I just want to point it out if you want a lot more information. You can see that the announcement up here that the 2014 BAS is suspended. But we do have, I want to point out here that you can download, you can look at the maps or the shape files, and you compare the shape files, that the BAS tiger shape files, to your layer to see what the differences are. Right now, the 2013 BAS shape files are still posted up there. Don't make any corrections. It's just there if you'd like to take a look at it. And I guess since I'm kind of getting started again on the BAS consolidation, please don't hesitate to contact me. You can email me, phone me. Regardless, I will contact all the counties in the state that are not yet participating to see whether they're interested and answer any questions that anybody has. So I think at that point, I'll stop and turn it over to Tony and his group to show this nice little tool that the state has developed. And Jim, I don't know at this point if we want to pause for questions or if we want to wait until the end.
No, let's take a break here and ask for any questions. Nothing's come in so far, but just a reminder, if you want to ask a question, just go ahead and raise your hand. And if you want to type a question, that's the other way you can do things. Either way, whatever works best for you. So at this point, Tony, while we let people think about that, I'm going to transfer control to you. If you can make sure you've got your slides up.
Okay.
And you should be able to share your screen here. Okay, so I can see that. And I should mention at least one person was having some problems seeing the slides during Gail's presentation. I think that was an isolated thing, but if anybody has any problems during the presentation, make sure you use that chat window and send me a message so we can try to get that resolved for you. So I'm not seeing any questions, Tony, so why don't you go ahead and take it from there.
Okay, that sounds good. So thank you, Gail, for that presentation. It gives me a good kind of backdrop to talk about the Boundary and Annexation Survey tool that we've created here at the Legislative Technology Services Bureau. I'm the GIS manager for the Wisconsin Legislature, and I probably have talked to a lot of people that are attending this webinar, or I've seen you at some conferences in the past. The purpose of the BAS tool that we created, the LTSB BAS tool was created to help improve the spatial accuracy of municipalities in the Census Bureau's Tiger database. These boundaries can only be updated by local communities that have the legal authority to submit new boundaries to the Census Bureau. And I think this is where a lot of our problems occurred during local and legislative redistricting. Some of those boundaries hadn't been updated by local communities, and sometimes there were some problems even if communities were participating with census, trying to get those boundaries in and accepted by the Census Bureau. This tool allows local governments to participate in BAS without dedicating a large amount of time or expense, and that was really a goal of the application, the reason why we created it. We know that counties and also some larger communities, they dedicate a lot of time to having a robust GIS system, and this was just another kind of thing that they had to do. We wanted to make sure that they could use the existing things or tools and resources that they had and plug this in and make the process as easy as possible for them. Why did we choose to create this tool to try to solve this problem, or why is it a problem? I would say local redistricting was one of the biggest issues that we had with the data set. We created a tool called WiseLR that helped local communities and the counties do redistricting or local redistricting. And out of 500 or 600 calls that we got over the process of a 6-month period, a majority of those were on the boundary information that was included with the application. Those boundary information problems, or those boundary problems, carried over into legislative redistricting, and they were also seen when our Government Accountability Board, or the GAB, tried to administer elections. You could see the differences between the local data sets in the counties and the data that was actually passed by the legislature. Tiger boundaries are used by federal and state government programs. There's a lot of things that come into play with these boundaries. Population estimates, as Gail had said, emergency response. It's used here in the States for certain things like that. We've volunteered in the past. The appropriations of revenue is a big deal, and if those boundaries are correct, communities could possibly miss some revenue that's coming in. And also, again, as Gail had mentioned, the American Community Survey data that is collected on a yearly basis and given out in estimates 3 and 5 year, I believe, too. That data, these boundaries feed into that data. And again, Gail had mentioned again that the Census Bureau is the steward of this data set. So it's important because a lot of federal agencies are looking at the Census Bureau for these boundaries. How does the B-A-S tool work? Again, the goal was to create a tool that allowed municipalities and counties to quickly and easily integrate their local data sets with census geography. This tool would integrate with existing GIS technology, and this tool would incorporate all the necessary B-A-S requirements listed in this 71-page document. And I'm not going to click on the document and show it to you, but it's a really cool PDF, and it takes a long time to get through, and it's really good reading. But we tried to incorporate everything in that is in that document into the tool so that someone using it wouldn't have to necessarily go over all those instructions and all those requirements to submit data to the Census Bureau. Some of the technical specifications of the application that we've created, it's called an Esri Add-In. It's not an extension. It's something new from Esri. It's basically a small file that you double-click and it installs itself. It can be used with ArcGIS Desktop Basic, just the basic license of ArcMap or ArcGIS Desktop, or what they're calling now. The tool will work just fine in. And we are currently able to run this version of the tool in 10, 10.1, and 10.2, and we'll keep it updated as releases from Esri are given. The installation does not require administrative privileges, so which is a big deal. In the past, we have created applications that needed admin privileges, and that is kind of a pain for everybody to get. It absolutely installs in seconds, and it does require that you download B-A-S data. For the state of Wisconsin, we've collected that data and put it on our website in a resource folder. It's 18 megabytes, so you won't have to worry about going out to the Census Bureau's website to gather those shapefiles for your community or county. I've included a link to the instructions on how to get our LTSB data integration tool or the B-A-S tool. And again, it's just a click here. I'm not going to click there now, but I'm sure hopefully Jim will make this presentation available, or there's also some documentation on our website. What LTSB will do, we will provide the software and support to counties and municipalities. So we are giving this tool out. It's a free tool, and if there is support issues with it or if you need help running the application, we will definitely be here to help you. We have email support, and you can probably give me a call too. We will work with the Census Bureau to ensure the software output or the change files, and you'll hear that quite a bit later, are correct. We will collect data used in the tool to create a statewide MCD layer. Now, we let everybody know that we were doing this. So if you do use your local boundaries in this tool, whatever boundaries you use to compare will be sent to the LTSB, and we will compose a statewide layer. And so far, I haven't gotten any grief over that. We will also monitor the Tiger releases to assure that insertion and quality control issues are taken care of, and we'll work with the GeoBAS team. And now that Gail's on the team, I'll be calling her to see what's going on there. But we will do all those things as part of our continued effort to make these boundaries better in the census data. Our results so far in 2012 for BAS and C-BAS, 2 counties out of 71 counties signed up for C-BAS. 2013, I have 28 out of 71. Gail's got more that were signed up there, which is really a good thing. But during our collection of data through the BAS tool for this last round of the Boundary Annexation Survey, and that ended on March 31st, I believe was the deadline, we did have 34 counties in the state actually used the tool and contributed to a quote-unquote statewide NCD layer. That layer is online. It's posted right off of our website in shapefile format with some metadata associated with it, and also on an online map at esri.com or arcgis.com. So it is a searchable layer that you can pull into ArcMap or potentially any other GIS system you have. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to show a live demonstration of the software, and this is always really the fun part. So to do that, I'm going to have Ryan Squires. He's our LTSV, or he's our GIS application developer, and he's going to take over the controls. While he's doing that, Jim, I was wondering if maybe anybody had any questions for me.
Yeah, one question actually did come in, Tony. I'm not sure if you can answer it, but take your best crack here. And that is, will the BAS funding help with the statewide parcel mapping initiative? And if so, how so?
BAS funding. I guess I don't think it will.
There is no funding.
So, yeah, there is no funding at this point that I believe for a statewide parcel layer. I guess it's out of my realm as far as the question goes. Sorry.
Well, the question refers to will BAS funding help, and I think the answer is no, because there is no BAS funding.
Right, right. We're doing this as kind of a grassroots effort, and so there is really no funding per se to build this tool or support this effort. It's just kind of our way of trying to get the boundaries right and making sure that the process goes smooth for everybody involved. Okay, so Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Tony. If that person wants to follow up, I'll chat with them. Otherwise, you guys can continue on.
Okay. I just want to make sure that everybody can see my screen.
It looks good to me, Tony.
Okay. All right, Ryan's going to take over and do a short demonstration of the software.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ryan Squires. Thanks, Tony, for the introduction. All right, I'm going to go through this kind of quickly because there's a lot of processing time involved with this kind of processing for the BAS files. When you get our PDF, which is the instructions for the downloads for the resource data, which is the BAS change file data, or the BAS MCD layer, and our Esri Add-In. As you can see, the Esri Add-In is about a 0.5 megabyte, and the data required is about 27 megabytes. As we mentioned, this is downloaded from our website, and it'll include everything you need for install and for running the application. So to install this application, all you have to do is double-click on the add-in anywhere on your own computer and click Install Add-In, and it's done. So now when you open up ArcMap, you should see a toolbar come up. It looks like this. It only has 5 options to it, and what we're talking about today are these 2 guys right here. So as I mentioned, this works in 10.0 through 10.2 with any license level with any major shapefile types. So file database, access database, STE, shapefiles all work with this. So to start this program off, you do create BAS change file, and what you're going to need is your MCD layer file. So this could be a county-wide MCD layer or just a single municipality. We're going to start with Kewaunee because it's a pretty good example of a standard Wisconsin county without a whole lot of municipal changes. So the wizard kind of works through as a menu. We're doing boundary corrections, which include annexations or de-annexations. This is the whole county municipalities, and these are full municipalities versus just being made of wards. Go down and choose Kewaunee. If you have a specified field that makes it a unique municipal identifier, you can specify it now. If not, as long as you, have just single municipalities, it'll pick up automatically which ones those are supposed to be. So I won't even specify a unique municipal identifier. We ask you to put your name and email address because it FTPs a file copy of what you insert into here, just so we can identify who sent it to us and if it's a real submission or somebody was just testing out how it works. So. And then I'll call it demo. I'll just click OK, and this will run through and create this county MCD file. So there's two parts of the creation process here. One is creating the change files, which Tony discussed as change polygons. And those are little differences between your municipal data set and the the census municipal data set. And boundary corrections are okay to be submitted as they are when they come out of this application. However, you must identify de-annexations and annexations when you submit a file to the census. If they find that a change is obviously an annexation or de-annexation and not a boundary correction, they will not accept it unless you link that change to some documentation, either through a PDF you attach along with the submission or through a website link. And I'll show you how that works in a second. Kewaunee County is, as I mentioned, an average-sized county for Wisconsin as far as complexity goes, and it takes about a minute to run or so. A larger county as far as complexity with Dane County, for instance, takes about 6 minutes to run. So it's completed now, and what's coming up here is the documentation tool. So this tool here is to help you identify annexations versus boundary corrections. So as I mentioned, boundary corrections do not require any kind of additional work. All you have to do is dismiss them as just a boundary correction. So if I zoom to the entire layer here, you'll see that they have, I have all these changes, and the points are centroids of those changes, the polygons being the changes themselves. There are 132 changes between the two data sets. So we can go through here and through Kewaunee really quickly and figure out which one's the annexations in here. I'm going to skip that for Kewaunee because Kewaunee is a very simple as far as changes county goes. There's no actual annexations in it. So I'm going to look at one that's a little more interesting for us and demonstrate some of the tools, which is more complex versus Dane County. The reason I didn't run it right away is because it'd take about 6 minutes and I wouldn't waste our time doing it. So you can open up any previously run through this documentation, so any change files. So as you're going through and you're documenting your annexations, if you don't have time to do it all at once, you can always go back through using the tool I just used, which is this documentation tool. Let me show you one more time. It lets you select any previously existing project. I had run this Dane BAS project before, so we went through the time. The one I just ran before, Kewaunee, this is the Kewaunee demo project. So we'll open add the layers it requires, and as you can see for Dane County, there's 1350 for changes, which is quite a few. And unless you happen to know where all of your changes are in your county for the last 5 to 10 years that may or not be in a layer correctly, you'll need to find a way to get through these rather quickly and find what you actually need to document. There's a few tools, a few ways I've done this to help you determine where your annexations are and which ones need to be documented. And the first is a filter. So if you know, for instance, that your county hasn't had any townships annexed in other townships, you can say, okay, any of those townships, the township changes are just changes. They're not annexations. Why don't you throw those out? Now we're already down to 1181. Now I know that my county hasn't had any de-annexations, so nobody's de-annexed anything for several years, and I'm sure all those are taken care of. So I throw all those out. Now you're down to 603 changes. You can say right here, okay, well nobody is annexed into a lake or annexed out of the county yet, so I can throw all those out. Now we're down to 598. If you can say, okay, well I know the municipality of Maple Bluff, which is landlocked by City of Madison, and Shorewood Hills, also landlocked by City of Madison. Neither of those have annexed anything because they're landlocked. So throw all those out because if there's any changes there, probably just annexations. So now we're already down to 585 from our originals. You can also filter by size too. So if you know that your county hasn't had any annexations less than an acre in the last few years, I can enter a 1 here and remove those, and that's down to 283 changes. Now we're starting to get down to a more manageable level of changes, and I can start determining where those annexations are. I've also done something here for you where I've flagged likely annexations, and these are ones that meet certain criteria: size, direction of change, certain areas for their shape, and it comes with 16. Again, another reason I chose to do Dane County for this part of the demo is because Kewaunee doesn't have any annexations and no flags, because it's a relatively simple, quickly process to do something that small. So of these 16 here, I can see this is actually just a change. This is a boundary correction. I'm sorry, this is a boundary correction, not an annexation. I can go ahead and dismiss this one. I can dismiss this one, but hey, this is an actual annexation here. I want to confirm it. I can turn on some aerial image here. Oh, I guess Tony doesn't have the Bing license for aerial turned on, but there's instructions on how to change this aerial imagery out automatically behind the scenes. They're in the documentation, so if you have your own aerial imagery, it's a very easy process to push this out for your own imagery if you want to use it through the toggle menu here. In any case, I'll assume this is an annexation here, number 438, and if I happen to have a PDF of this documentation of this annexation in a PDF form, I can write something like see attached PDF, then name the name of it, enter the effective date of that annexation, document, and it'll throw it in there for you. And it's saved automatically for you, so anytime you come back to it, it's already saved in there. I can go through here and dismiss a few of these more as boundary corrections. These are the lakes, so they come up as corrections, but that'll be thrown out when it gets submitted. This is also a correction. So let's say I go through here and I get through all my, sorry about that. I'll get through here and I'll find all my annexations, de-annexations. I've documented them. They're all good to me, so I can assume the rest are boundary corrections. So now I can go ahead and create my final submission to the census. The way this is done, click Finish. It tells you it's going to be creating it, and a bunch of stuff will come up here. You pull open the Windows Explorer. Where's it? There it is. There we go. All right, so it comes up under your folder automatically. Here's my Dane VAS project. It's still creating right now, I guess. Yes. And what's creating for you is a zip file, which is all named correctly and formatted attribute-wise correctly as approved by the census, and should be less than a half megabyte, I assume, when it's finished. And as I said in the documentation, I put in see attached PDF. What you do here now is, as it's finishing up right now, is just paste it into the same folder and zip those together, and you can submit that all in one big package to the census. The other option for ending your documentation is the Secretary of State's website has much of the documentation online. Okay, so here's the output. It comes in a folder, says submit to census, and here's the file right here. This is about 1.2 megabytes. This is the name the proper way for Dane County and types of changes that it consists of. So you would put the PDFs right here in this folder, zip them together, and go ahead and send that into the Census Bureau. All right, I'll turn it back over to Tony here. Thank you very much.
Hey Ryan, before you step away, one question did come in, and that is if you guys have updated the tool recently, Someone asked, it looks different than when they installed it. And the follow-on to that is, can you just simply reinstall the latest version by essentially re-downloading it? So a new version, and how do you reinstall it if you want to?
Right. So we do have new versions kind of coming out somewhat regularly now, but the latest version here is a little faster than the old one, so I would recommend installing it. And the way you do this is re-download the extension again. Go ahead and go into Add-in Manager under Customize, and you'll see it parked right here. Go ahead and click Delete Add-in, which takes about a second. It deletes it, and then double-click the new one and install itself over it, so you have the new one then.
Perfect.
And again, that was just going into Customize Add-in Manager and deleting the old one.
Great. That's the only question we have so far.
Oh, also make sure, I'm sorry, if you get the new version, make sure that you download the new set of resource data as well.
Okay. Actually, we do have one more question just came in, and that is, can counties submit boundary corrections so both data sets ultimately match, or all the boundary, or all the boundary corrections dismissed? Let me read that again. That was a tongue twister. Can counties submit boundary corrections so both data sets ultimately match, or are all boundary corrections dismissed?
Yeah, so I guess so if you're doing a consolidated BAS, the municipalities are actually giving the county the authority to submit on their behalf. So there's only one submission. So there shouldn't be any kind of reconciliation between the two. It's just the one file from the county will be submitted to the Census Bureau. If a particular municipality is using this application and the county is also submitting data to the Census Bureau, and there's some contradiction between the two layers of information, the Census Bureau had let us know that they would take a look at that information from both, and they would reconcile it with the county and the two communities in question.
Okay, Tony, if that didn't answer the question, we'll have them follow up with an email.
Okay, that'd be great. All right, I want to turn it over now to Fred Yowsley from Dane County Land Information Office. He has been working with us on this application, and he has been a user of the application. And I was hoping that he could share some experiences that he's had working with the Census Bureau and working with LTSB and the tool. So here's Fred.
Thanks, Tony. I don't have any slides to share. I was just going to have a discussion of the Dane County experience. I guess to preface this, Tony and I have been talking about Consolidated BAS for a number of years. I was in the initial discussions with his office on the development of this tool. So I was kind of waiting to see what was going to come out, because before that, the Consolidated BAS was kind of a daunting experience. In 2011 and 2012, there was a lot of election activity going on, and so that kind of helped, I guess, get us involved in the Consolidated BAS with the redistricting effort. There was a lot of input. We did a lot of support to the county board and to municipalities for reestablishing the ward boundaries and those types of things. We also were working with our county clerk and the local clerks in the voter registration and working with GAB on updated boundaries. And with all that work, I guess, when we sent out a letter through our county clerks, an email basically to all the municipal clerks in the county, there are 61, that the Dane County was going to undertake a consolidated BAS. Within 30 days, every community said that they're in. They didn't want to deal with any more mapping. They were done. So maybe it was worked a little slicker. I didn't have to send any emails compared to Waukesha County that had to do some follow-out emails and phone calls. It worked very quickly for us. With the setup of the tool, I guess I want to reiterate that this is a very easy tool set to work with, and I thank Ryan and Tony for the work that they've done on this. It made it incredibly easy to download, set up. There are a few things you need to prep for. We have the advantage in Dane County. We track the annexations as part of our parcel mapping. So we do have the polygons for all of the annexations that we've been tracking since 2001. And we do have a ordinance number that is documented with that. So it made it easy for us to at least record the document. Once I completed the mapping, I did have to do some legwork. We don't have all the ordinances online, or I should say they're not easily accessible. The Register of Deeds does have it, but there's an account system that they would have to basically purchase access to. What I did in working with our Register of Deeds and our county clerk, basically created PDFs for all of the related documents to the annexations, and I included that in my package and submittal to the census. As Ryan went through Dane County, he pointed out there were a lot of a high number of errors, and the filters really made it very easy to go through that. In reality, most of the errors, if we would have kept processing that data, were really just boundary adjustments. It was just the census data did not match up with the municipal boundaries accurately, and there was probably maybe 24, like 2 dozen, that were actual annexations where we had to have related documentation. I'm just going through my list here. So again, we submitted the changes to LTSB, and then I also packaged up a submittal to the U.S. Census. And in total, I think of mapping time, it took me maybe an hour, hour and a half to go through the whole process, and then a couple more hours just to track down the documentation that supported all of the annexations that we worked with. So for the future, and I guess Tony kind of answered this already, they are keeping up with the versions, which I'm glad to hear. We've just switched over to 10.2, and I'm glad to see that there will be continued support for the new versions that come out there. And I'm also looking towards when we will start to see a statewide municipal boundary layer, which I know that they have Tony showed me online, they have some mapping of the communities or the counties that have already submitted. So I think we're heading down the right path.
Maybe I'll show that if you don't mind while you're talking.
Sure.
Okay.
So that's really kind of my experience. It was very positive. We had the experience of being right across the street. So if there were some demos or some questions, we could get together very quickly and discuss them. And I want to thank Gail that in looking at the Consolidated BAS for the last probably 10 years, I think finally we have a program that is a little bit less, I guess, restrictive. Previous efforts still required the giving the name of your firstborn and everything else before you could even be involved in the Consolidated BAS, and I think the census has realized what the state is pulling together and the data that the locals can contribute, and making it a lot easier to get that documentation to them.
I wanted to make one more note. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention the tool actually filters for you. The census requires all changes to be at least 30 feet in width.
Right.
So filter goes through and makes sure that the measurements for the width of all changes meet that requirement, and automatically throws the extras out for you.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank Fred for coming over and talking about the application, and Ryan for doing the demonstration. As just a final piece of what I have to say, I'll show you the website. Of course, I clicked on the link and the link doesn't show. I'll make sure that the link works properly so you can see the online version of the 34 municipal or the county submissions of municipalities. So you can see that. But we do have a website here, and it's linked off the State of Wisconsin Legislature's homepage. If you go to legislative districts, and then on the left-hand side there is a Boundary Annexation Survey link. And here is all the information about Boundary Annexation Survey. It has Gail's information on there. We maintain a blog relating to the tool and when it will be released and when we are going to be presenting at conferences. The documentation installation is here, and it also lists data. These are the data sets that I was talking about before, the 34 counties submissions. The data is out there in shapefile format, and it does have metadata associated with it. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask, but there is contact information at the bottom of this website as well, so you can get a hold of Gail or myself.
Hey, Tony, could you throw that contact slide up on the PowerPoint?
I sure can.
One more slide, at least that's not what I see yet. There you go, thanks. So we're running a little bit short on time. Gail, was there anything else you wanted to add at this point?
I just want to say thanks to the State Cartographer's Office for hosting the webinar today. And I also really want to thank Tony and Fred and Ryan for their leadership. I think it's just awesome that they went ahead and developed this tool to make it easy for all of us to work together. And I think it just shows that if we sort of have a common goal, there is a way for us to help each other. I'm really open for suggestions too. If anybody has suggestions or questions, please don't hesitate to contact either Tony or I. Really appreciate everybody's time.